with that, Partha, you can please carry forward with today's program.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank Mr. Sunita Baral also from SAI, who has been supporting us in all aspects in technical terms. Today our program is Safer You and Safe Me. This will be conducted by Shreyas Rao, who is a learning and development consultant at Swim Matters. He is a learning design consultant in sports education, where he helps school, academics, federation, and high performance center to design learning opportunities for athletes, coach, and parents. We welcome Mr. Shreyas Rao. Good morning, Mr. Shreyas.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul. So I'm just going to share. So I think the setting to share the screen has to be enabled. So I can share. Right. So today's session, I represent Swimming Matters. So Swimming Matters, you might know, is started by Hakeem, who took the session a couple of days ago. And it started with the mission of actually ensuring that 1 billion Indians can engage with water safely, right? And also safely and correctly, and also to ensure that we win medals at the Olympics. And how they do that is that we work on different kinds of aspects. One is aquatic education, so teacher programs. Then there is the infrastructure through the Mata pools, and also policy and practice. So through multiple domains, we're trying to improve the swimming culture in India. And I work as an L&D consultant, and I like the Swimming Matters team. I like to thank the Swimming Matters team for giving me this opportunity, and I represent them in today's session. A little bit about me. So I started off with a postgraduate degree in this in Mumbai. So I've been in the sports sector for about 7 years. I started off in grassroots sport, which basically means I was working with small scale academies in the management aspects. But somewhere down the line, I got the opportunity to manage athlete education at Go Sports Foundation, where I worked with organizations like the BCCI, the International Shooting Sport Federation, which is the ISSF, and IOC, and even SAI, to develop handbooks, design workshops. So that was my formal introduction into learning design. And somewhere I felt that when I went back to grassroots sport, of course, there are a lot of things that might have to change, but something that I felt very strongly about is, certain careers of young students, young athletes perishing even before they start because of lack of information, about injury management or about the laws, about regulation. So somewhere I felt, lack of information shouldn't be a barrier. And how can I do that? So which is why I took on my role as a learning development or learning design consultant, where I work with professionals, academies, and many, many entities within the sports ecosystem to design workshops, to bring out education materials, to create awareness programs. And that's what I intend to do, and that's my passion. In between, I've done a PG diploma in child rights law. This is a distance course, and that's pretty much what qualifies me to take this session today. And like I said, I'm representing Swimming Matters. Before we start, I would like to just pose a question to all of you today. If you can just take about 20 seconds to think of, what does this mean? Everybody says we should ensure a safe experience while coaching. Coaching should be safe. If coaching is safe, it's good for everybody. But what do we mean by this? Everybody knows it's important, but do we realize what it means? Right? So just 10, 15 seconds just to ponder over it, and then we'll move on to the topic. Right, so what do we mean by this? Actually, to help you further, I have some statements, and you can read the statement, and you can tell us either through the chat, or you can just think for yourself if you agree, or you're neutral, or you disagree. Okay, So just some statements to get you thinking. First statement is, as a swimming coach, I understand the meaning of safe coaching clearly and practice it properly, right? So do you think it applies to you? If you agree, you can say agree, neutral, or disagree. Feel free to use the chat box. I'm following the chat box, so I'll take some cues out of that. Okay, so it's just for you to think. So that's statement number one. As a swimming coach, I understand the meaning of safe coaching and practice it properly. All right, some great responses coming. Most of them agree, which is great. The next statement is, there's sufficient awareness among Indian swim coaches about safe coaching. Okay, so do you think there is enough awareness among the Indian swim coaching fraternity about what is safe coaching? Okay, and feel free, no one's going to judge. It's just, it could be any, the answer could be anything, but whatever you feel, honestly, you can share. It's agree or neutral or disagree. Again, feel free to use the chat box if needed. There's, okay, some responses coming in. All right, okay. So I'll move to the next statement, which is that the aspect of safe coaching needs to be given more importance in India. This is the final one. Okay, so do you think the aspect of safe coaching needs to be given more importance in India? Do you agree, neutral, disagree? Okay. Most of you agree. And the chat box, something to think about. Cool. So if you agree to the statement, or if you think that you agree to the statement, that's a good first start. That means that SFI has done a great job of being open-minded to including this, to include the subject, because it's a very, very important subject. Firstly, to start off with, what is the safe coaching all about? It is not just about keeping swimmers safe. There is an impression that safety, safeguarding is about keeping the children and the swimmers safe. But we are taking a bigger step. It's saying safe coaching is not just about keeping swimmers safe. It is, yes, of course, of keeping them, of course, swimmers should feel safe, but the coaches also understand safe practices and they're protected against false allegations. In the same way, the management is clear how to respond and monitor, be it the academy or a school or wherever you train. The management is clear, there's a clear policy. And the last part is that all stakeholders are aware what is the acceptable conduct and safety protocols, right? So, which means that safe coaching is not just about protecting the swimmer, it's about ensuring a safe environment overall. And in swimming, we need to acknowledge that ensuring safe experiences is a crucial component of improving participation in sport. Research has told us, practice has told us that unless the engagement with swimming as a sport is safe, improving participation, the quality and quantity of participation, as well as getting medals for the country, will be a bit of a question mark. And if we remember right, so some of the Olympians who had participated in the series earlier had shared of how there were certain times where they didn't feel too safe, and for whatever reason. But these are certain experiences that can make or break a swimmer, and which is why it is a central theme to ensure the safe experiences are enabled for swimmers. So, which is why, the reason that we are even attempting the subject, so just to have an open conversation so that we can start talking more about it. To be very honest, to really look at the entire child, safety and safeguarding umbrella, it's difficult in 1 hour. But our intention is for you to just get an orientation, just get some ideas, to get you thinking. So we hope that through this presentation, we will start talking more about it. And when we start talking more about it, automatically a lot of issues will be addressed. Okay. What is curious about swimming as a sport? What is it that is different from other sports? Is that in case of swimming, there is safety and there is safeguarding. There are two things that are very relevant in the swimming context, and I'll explain what that means. And as a coach, it's for us to understand them separately. क्या होता है, क्या है, safety क्या है, safeguarding क्या है. And after that, we need to also practice it together. Okay. And of course, in swimming, there's a specific case of safety because of drowning and other related accidents, right? So this is very unique because every session, every training session poses some risk, if not for drowning, but it could be some accident, some slip, some fall, some injury, where we really need to be very alert. So that is, of course, safety. And I think all of, as coaches, all of you might be aware of it in a lot of ways, and which depends on training protocols and surveillance mechanisms. Surveillance basically lifeguard ka system ki kya hai? Are we ensuring that no accidents happen, or at least the risk of accidents is minimum? But at the same time, there is another aspect of safe coaching, which is safeguarding, which is to protect swimmers from any harm, abuse, or discrimination. Okay, and that of course depends on education, procedures, and reporting mechanisms. So in swimming, just by the way swimmers are clothed, just the way they train, there are some unique risks. And as coaches, we may have to not just concentrate on safety. Ki, I'm safe coaching kar rahe ho, and that's because I know how to rescue someone from drowning. But that's not it, right? The ambit of safe coaching is larger, and इसमें safeguarding भी आता है, and it's important that we also consider that simultaneously while as we coach. Firstly, about safety. Now, with safety, it is not possible to touch upon it too much in this session because it's a very practical skill that you have to learn. You need a pool environment. So I'm going to concentrate more on safeguarding in this session. But just so that we are also conscious of safety, I just put a slide so that we think about it. And these are some sample safety measures. This is not an exhaustive list. इससे भी ज़्यादा measures हो सकते हैं. But these are some sample measures that just to get you thinking. As coaches, you may be aware of all this, right? Emphasize on rescue skills, dedicated surveillance, protocols of safe exits. The coach should be on the deck before entry and leave only after everybody is exited. Pool में depth markings होना चाहिए, safety markings होना चाहिए. कोई भी objects, equipments that can cause injuries, they should be removed. And there is first aid training, CPR certifications, and so on. So this सारी चीजें जो है, it is common knowledge, but sometimes if we don't think about it very often, some lapses can happen, which is why it is very important to go back to these safety measures. And these are some examples, so that for us to consider, especially because every coaching session poses a safety risk. But like I said, safety is something that, it's a bit more common knowledge than safeguarding, which is why I won't concentrate too much on it. I will use most of this session to concentrate on a topic called as safeguarding. And safeguarding, like we remember in the previous slide, I said it's this protection from any harm, abuse, or discrimination. Okay. So there are three things to safeguarding that we need to, as we explore the subject. One is the foundation for safeguarding. Or foundation safeguarding is such a thing that people say, if we get this right, if we get our foundation right, 50 to 60% of the problem is solved. Okay. And what that is, I will explain. And then next we will go to the types of abuse so that we are aware of what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And lastly, सबसे common सवाल की ये सब ठीक है. I understand foundation, I understand what is wrong, but what can we do about it? How can we change it? So part of that I will cover in the practical measures. So let's get to the foundation for safeguarding. Okay, what does that mean? Now, there are three things to this, and it's more of a belief system that we need to adopt. And the three things are working with the rights-based approach, with the belief in equality and dignity, while being open to changing cultural values. Now, the first two things, it's not very easy to do within 5 minutes, but I just hope that it prompts some thinking, because it's very important. And this takes months, years for us to, work with the rights-based approach, a belief in equality and dignity. But, it's a mindset thing. But the third part, which we can actively work on, is changing our cultural values. I will explain all of that in just a bit. Firstly, just to give an overview of rights-based approach. Basically, what it means is that agar we approach our profession as coaches with the point of view that swimmers has needs, that we are doing our swimmers a favor, hum ehsan kar rahe, then we'll never be able to, practically safeguard the swimmers. Rather than saying, oh, they have needs, they deserve assistance, we are doing them a favor by, we should adopt an approach where we say it is our duty to provide assistance. Okay. Can we say that? Can we say swimmers have the rights, as just like human rights, which we should uphold, and it's a duty to provide assistance. And and most importantly, we might think that coaching is just outcome driven. Performance kaise hoga, medal kitne aaye, doesn't matter what they learn, doesn't matter how. But can we shift that approach to a more process driven and say it matters how swimmers learn? And in this process, we should look at it as a duty and not like some patronizing behavior ki, oh, bichare swimmers ehsan kar rahe, let's help them. That approach will never quite work. So that's basically the difference between needs-based and rights-based. Again, it's not something very easy to understand, but I just want, I just hope that all of you can just start thinking about this. The next, of course, in this is belief in equality and dignity, which is equally important. So it's not that we are working with the rights-based approach, but rights-based approach for some swimmers, but needs-based for others. ऐसा नहीं हो सकता. We should somewhere believe in this principle of equality, which means that all swimmers deserve the same opportunities, and I shall coach in a fair, just, and impartial manner. For example, let's say in your pool, there is a child who is dropped by his or her father in a Mercedes car. Okay. And there is also another child who has come cycling 60 kilometers, or 60 is too much maybe, but say 20 kilometers from his village. And they're both a part of your group. Will you as a coach treat them equally? Now it's easy to say, yes, I'll treat them equally, but somewhere certain biases, certain things come into play, and this is not very easy to do. But having said that, can we be conscious of it? Can we really ensure that all our swimmers, irrespective of what background they come from, they are treated equally? And the second part along with that is dignity. So it's not just treat them equally, but treat them in a way that they don't feel hurt, harmed, or humiliated. We should believe that all swimmers are worthy of safety and respect, and I should avoid any behavior that poses a threat to their dignity. So these are two things that, if we are open-minded about it and willing to approach, willing to adopt this approach, will go a long way in really ensuring safeguarding. But the last part, which is the toughest part, but also the most important part in ensuring safeguarding, is trying to change our cultural values. Basically, it means that as we grow up, there are certain beliefs that we ourselves adopt. It could be that you have faced something, unfortunately, or you see it all around you, sorry, right? So you see it, har koi kar. The one view can be that yaar har jagah ho raha hai. I myself have faced it. Why should I change my coaching style? मैं क्यों बदलूं? ये ठीक है, ये मेरा style है और मैं करूँगा. This is what I faced, this is what I learned, and that's how it will be. But can we be open-minded to change that to a mindset where we say, yes, I have been discriminated. I see it all around me, but it is not right, and have a chance to change my coaching style. So it's just about a mindset issue, from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. But if you are willing to change, then the two earlier things that I spoke about is working with a rights-based approach and treating all swimmers with equality and dignity, even if you feel like you may not be doing it so much right now. If you're open to changing your values, maybe tomorrow or in a few months down the line, you'll be able to address that. You'll be able to treat them equally, right? So this is really important. And to explain this even further, there is this very simple, beautiful graphic that I found, which says, be the person you needed when you were younger. Okay. So that means that irrespective of what I may have faced, even if it was wrong, can I show the courage, the moral courage to say, it's okay what I went through, but I will be the person I needed when I was younger for my swimmers, right? I will challenge my beliefs. I will try and challenge my values and try to be that person. So can we do that? And to help you a little bit more, the next slide, which is probably the most important one in terms of changing your cultural values, is recognizing vulnerabilities. what happens is, like I said, we all grow up in a certain environment where, some form of discrimination might be happening, right? It could be personality or social, and there are many attributes. The list that I've given in the slide are basically some things that make a swimmer already in a vulnerable position. So if he's in a group, right, these are some things that they may already feel a bit conscious about. As coaches, can we recognize this vulnerability rather than act upon it and make it worse, right? And recognize, be sensitive, challenge our own biases, and also, understand something that's going on. So, for example, the personality attributes could be many. As a swimmer can be, thin, short, fat, could be shy, could be an introvert, could carry a disability, either some locomotor disability or maybe some speech impairment, gender, male and female, age. So there could be a swimmer in a group who is much elder or very younger. So even though we might have seen ki yaar, physical attributes is natural. Agar koi, if someone is very thin, then people will make fun of him. So rather than that, can we move beyond that? Can we recognize that it's a vulnerability and act upon it? And similarly, social attributes जो हमारी society में बहुत ही common है, unfortunately. अभी भी caste, religion, financial status, regional prejudice. So ये सब चीजें क्या है ना कि suppose I grew up where in an environment where the girls were just not allowed to swim. I will grow up with the mentality that yeah, girls are not allowed to swim because that's all I've seen. Okay. Similarly with caste or religion or region, अगर I have some prejudices, environment में ऐसा है कि सब कोई बोलता है कि नहीं, that person belongs to that caste or that religion, and they are like that, they are like this. We need not treat them equally. So if you grow up in an environment, you will naturally carry some biases, and all of us have these biases. We can think that nahi, hum kuch bias nahi, hum sabko equally dekhte hain. No, it's not the case. Unfortunately, all of us carry some biases based on an environment. So the point here is that firstly, can we become aware of these biases? कि हम unintentionally discriminate तो नहीं कर रहे. We didn't want to do it, but it's just the way we grown up. So can we become self-aware of our biases? And then once you become self-aware and get your act together, can we also understand the cause of discriminatory behavior around us? हो सकता है कि you're coaching, you're training very safely, but you see between swimmers कुछ हो रहा है, या between another coach and a swimmer कुछ हो रहा है, between a parent or swimmer कुछ हो रहा है, or between parents कोई झगड़ा हो रहा है. So we should recognize it as a vulnerability. We should understand what could be the cause of this kind of behavior, and we should act upon it. Right? So like I said, these this sort of thing, this foundation, if we can get it right and act upon it and work on it, will go a long way in helping what we can do to ensure a safe experience for all our children. Okay. So let me next go to the types of abuse. Okay. So what are the different types of abuse? Based on which we can actually which we can get knowledge. And this is a bit of a intense session, so I would like you to pay a little bit of attention. The first thing that is common across all that something that is the foundation of recognizing this issue is that knowledge is the best defense. What does that mean? That means that if the swimmer, the coach, the parent, the official, everybody knows what is acceptable and what is not, half the issue is solved. That is always the best defense. You are safe as a coach from any false allegation. The swimmer is safe from any kind of bad behavior. And similarly, officials know how to act and respond. Parents know how to act and respond. So basically, knowledge has been and will always be the best defense. So we should firstly try to understand what are the different types of abuse. Okay, so the IOC, which is the International Olympic Committee, has released a consensus statement on harassment and abuse, which means that that is applicable to all international federations as well as all national federations and state federations, and it covers all athletes. So this is something that applies to you naturally, because you fall under the ambit of the IOC. And what does IOC say? The important thing to notice in this slide is that usually when you talk of abuse, the most common thing is yaar ki sexual harassment, which gets the most attention. Media may be aata hai, and people think that's all, that's it, that's the only kind of abuse that we should protect ourselves from. But that's not the case. The IOC guidelines clearly lists that there are different kinds of abuse and harassment, and it's our duty to know about all of them. And I'll slowly go on each of these slides. I will also tell you what are some sample negative behaviors in this, so you can understand this even better. And also some symptoms. So agar kuch hota hai, to how does it show in swimmers, right? So this will probably help you a bit. Firstly, types of harassment. Physical abuse. Physical is causing deliberate harm. Deliberate physical harm could be hitting, slapping, suffocating. Another one is force feeding prohibited substances. Doping ka case jo hota hai. But anything that causes physical harm qualifies as physical abuse, and it is not right. Second one is emotional abuse. You're not doing anything physically or even in a sexual manner, but just by behavior, you are creating some negative feelings in this woman or somebody around you. And this could mean humiliating someone, belittling someone, isolating. Matlab, group hai, you are training everybody, but you're deliberately ignoring someone in the group. Overprotecting is another big one, especially with parents and swimmers. They are itna overprotective, they just don't give the swimmer any freedom to do anything. And lastly, of course, is intimidating or blackmailing or any such activity which qualifies as emotional abuse, and it is right again. The third one, which a lot of us are naturally not aware of, but actually is abuse, is neglect. ये commonly hota hai in families sometimes, where parents are very neglectful. They don't provide food in time, they don't educate them, they don't treat them well, they don't take them to hospitals. But similarly, the neglect also manifests in coaching. So suppose you are deliberately refusing, aap kar sakte hai lekin nahi kar rahe, okay? One of swimmers' needs could be diet ho, training ho, injury management ho. If you are deliberately refusing or failing to meet, then that qualifies as abuse. Right? So this is something that we should be very watchful of. And the last part is sexual harassment. And of course, the Indian law defines it a certain way through the POCSO Act and the Sexual Harassment Act. But what does the IOC statement say? It says any unwanted or unwelcome conduct, okay, which is of a sexual nature. It can be either verbal, non-verbal, digital, or physical. Matlab, it need not be always some physical contact. It could just be some bad words spoken. Or it could be non-verbal, just done through some gestures, lewd gestures. It could be digital, matlab through WhatsApp or through online you are sexually harassing someone. Or it of course can be physical as well, which is actual coercion. And the most important part is the last part, is that in a condition where consent is coerced, manipulated, or cannot be given. Consent means permission. So where swimmer can not permit or do anything about it. They're either forced into it, they're manipulated into it, or they just can't give consent, right? So anything that is done in this way qualifies in sexual harassment and abuse, and we should avoid it. To understand this further, some sample negative behavior. See, unfortunately, it is common. Let's acknowledge that some of these things might be common, but it's just an awareness for all of us to realize that, what, I think it is not right. And what are some sample behaviors? Physical abuse. Spanking someone with a whistle while training causes physical harm. It's abuse. Pushing someone into water sometimes happens commonly when a swimmer is really scared or just doesn't want to get in. Push someone or shove their head inside water. Physical abuse. Emotional abuse bhi hota hai, where you encourage favoritism, gift deke, you groom them, you feel the swimmer feels obliged to agree to whatever the coach says because gift de raha hai, favoritism kar raha hai. But that actually is abuse. Other one is deliberately refusing attention to the slowest swimmer. Unintentionally bhi ho jata hai, but sometimes if you do that, has a bad effect on the swimmer. So something we need to avoid and be watchful of. Neglect, refusing to identify a swimmer by his name after many sessions. So whistle se bulana. These are small things, but if we don't do it, it actually has a bad impact. So can we learn the name of the swimmers instead of identifying them by the whistle? Or it could also be refusing first aid. Your injury ho gaya and you're just negligent. You refused it. Training may a competition. So that's a sample behavior for neglect. And the last, of course, is sexual, which I think we might be a little bit more aware of, which is showing porn clips. Of course, it is abuse. Touching swimmers' private parts intentionally or inappropriately, abuse. Taking photographs in the pool without consent, okay, abuse. And how this is, so how did the IOC decide that all of these are harassment and abuse and should be avoided? These are behaviors, these are things that have a lifelong impact on the swimmer. We might just not recognize it, but it actually has it. It influences the way they behave with others. It influences the way they become as coaches. So anything that has a lifelong negative impact has been brought under this umbrella. And these are some sample negative behaviors, just to help you understand this further. And the last one is, so that you understand it even more, कि इसमें symptoms क्या होते हैं? अलग-अलग type के abuse का अलग-अलग type का ये symptoms आते हैं. For example, if it's physical abuse, you might notice कि यार swimmer में there's some unexplained injury. You don't know where that's come from. Or it is some rough behavior. It's बहुत common. If the child is facing abuse at home or in the training environment, instead of reacting in that situation, the child or the swimmer might use rough behavior against somebody else, their peers. Right? So that is one symptom. Low self-esteem, obviously, is a symptom. Similarly, with emotional abuse, you might notice some swimmer has a lot of fear or shyness, or has lot of mood disorders, could be very active, hyper, sometimes very low, and of course could have some low self-esteem. Similarly, with neglect, you could notice that there's some untreated medical problem. Kuch rashes hai, ya to kuch swelling hai. It's been there for many days and it's just not been treated. So maybe some people who are supposed to care are negligent. And sometimes if a child or a swimmer is neglected either at home or training, it results in some lack of social skills. So the way they interact, the way they talk, the way they communicate, उसमें दिख जाता है कि I think this child has faced some neglect. And the last one is sexual harassment. Of course, that also has symptom. Worst case, depression हो सकता है, suicidal tendency हो सकता है. There's also lack of trust. But there is also another way this manifests. Ki if someone has faced something, it might, you might notice that somebody has some strange sexual behavior, making some gestures, watching some videos. So if someone has faced it, this is how they might cope with it. They might cope by using more sexual behavior against others. Right? So these are some symptoms in which it manifests. So basically, if you're sensitized to it, if you're sensitized to, what are the different types of harassment and abuse, similarly, what are the sample negative behaviors in each of this, what are the symptoms, we are in a much better position to know what is acceptable and what is not. And in a much better position again to change our cultural values. जो मैंने पहले बताया था, यार हाँ शायद maybe I might be doing some of this, but I want to change because it's not right, and I will move forward. So finally, my last part of the presentation is practical measures. So this is a very common question. I've taken this session a couple of times before, and the basic सवाल ये आता है कि हाँ ठीक है, foundation है ठीक है, ये types of abuse, all right, got that, but what do we do about it? क्या करें इसका? And unfortunately, the situation is that it is common. It might be a very dark kept secret. Maybe people don't talk about it, but it is common. We should acknowledge that. And then we should see what we can do about it. So practical measures are basically 4 things that we as coaches can do. One is first to be aware. Okay. Just be aware of what is appropriate, what is inappropriate, be alert in the training environment, so on and so forth. Second hota hai managing behavior. Okay, now I'm aware, but how do I manage my own behavior or the behavior of my swimmers so that I don't commit anything? Third thing is you're aware, your behavior is great, you are doing your training right, but can I also go one step higher and recognize someone who's at risk or someone who might have faced something in my environment? And the last thing is, of course, addressing and reporting. And we'll come to each of that. First is, of course, being aware. Is that know the accepted behaviors and training routines. It's the first step. And, it's take some time, but maybe you might be unintentionally already doing something wrong. So best is to discuss and know what are the accepted behaviors. Can we make a list? What are the accepted and unaccepted behaviors and act accordingly? Maintaining a training log. This is a very important thing in case of false accusation. So there's a story of a trainer who was a few months ago accused of doing something by a child, even though he didn't do it, but it was a false accusation. Child said somewhere at the end of the class, last 10 minutes में मेरे साथ ऐसा किया कुछ. So the trainer was shocked कि क्या did I do something wrong? What was wrong with that? But the good thing for him was that he was maintaining a training log. मतलब after each session, he just made a simple note saying मैंने क्या किया आज. What did I do first? What did I do second? What did I do last? And because he maintained that log, he could go back to that sheet and say, last 10 minutes he बोल रहा है मैंने ऐसा किया, but last 10 minutes तो मैं cool down करा रहा था, right? And my children can give proof of that because I was doing it. So basically, maintaining a training log firstly saves you, and if you can do that as a practice, it will be very beneficial in the long run. And of course, the third part is ensuring a safe environment. It's not just about your drills and your behavior. Is the environment safe? Is the swimmer feeling fearless? And it comes down to where the swimmer is staying. Agar camp mein reh rahe hain, so is the camp safe? If it is a girl child, is she feeling safe? Does she have good accommodation? Does she have good food? Is she all alone? Does she have someone to support? Again, in the environment, are we sure that there are no external people who can come, take photos, behave in the wrong way? So these are some things that we should be aware and alert about. And how do we become aware is to discuss, to talk, and to make lists. For example, I have given you an example of touching. Touching का बहुत issue आता है. A lot of teachers, coaches are themselves confused कि what is appropriate, because it's not like you can't touch a swimmer, but at the same time, it is something that is often misunderstood. So, and that is why creating some sample protocols help, right? So these are some things. These are not an exhaustive list, but just some things to get you thinking. First is keep hands always visible as much as possible. Avoid all contact between the chest and the knees, restrict it to elbow to the palm or knee to foot. Seek permission in case touch is absolutely necessary, especially if parents are around. Make sure that if you're doing something, do it in front of the parents. Never have someone swim between the legs. Have them swim through a hook, even if it's a drill that requires you to do that. Please be wary of that. And lastly, clarify the ways in which swimmers can report. So at the start only, you can tell the swimmers, if you feel uncomfortable, tell me, and this is the way you can tell me. So these are some sample protocols just to get you thinking. But the point here is that while you start becoming aware, you start thinking of what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. Creating protocols and lists like this helps, right? So this is the first step to do that. Second is, of course, managing behavior. So managing behavior में होता क्या है कि you might think, yes, now I'm aware of the behaviors, which is acceptable, which is appropriate, but still I'm not able to build trust with the swimmer. And kuch to ho raha hai, people are saying ki, my coaching is discriminatory or I'm doing some abuse. Why is that happening? And this is the second step of self-reflection. And when you do that, just think of whether it could be a values gap, a knowledge gap, a skill gap, or a policy gap. It could be a combination of all these four, but it could be just one thing also. Well, values gap, what is that? So, is there some values that I need to question? This is what I touched upon earlier in the presentation. It could be that you have no intention, but just because of the way you brought up the environment, you're doing something that is that somebody else is feeling is unacceptable. So could that be the reason? Can I question my own values? Knowledge gap. Yes, मैंने पढ़ा है the list, the types of harassment abuse क्या होते हैं. I've also made a protocol list, but is there something I still don't know? Do I really need to gain more knowledge about what is acceptable and what is wrong? Right? So that could be a knowledge gap, and you can address that. The skills gap. Now, this thing is one of the most prominent reasons why some bad training techniques continue to be used, right? It is that a coach knows ki I should do it. It's wrong. He has the knowledge of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. But still, just to manage a situation, they may not have an alternate drill to use, right? So, for example, disciplining swimmers or children, it's a big, it's a big issue. You're not supposed to hit, not supposed to touch. How do I discipline my swimmers? How do I uh, or another thing very common in swimming is fear, especially if you're teaching someone, it's just very scared, not able to do it. And in this case, it is important for us to know that rather than using an abusive behavior, like pushing someone or hitting someone, there is always another way to do it. Even things like learning names, you can do that through activities, through games. So the first thing to know is that if I have to change, there are some skills that I can learn. So what are these skills that I need to learn? So that's one way to think about. And the last is, of course, policy gap. Maybe all these gaps are covered. You know exactly what you're supposed to do and not, but the protocols are not in place. Environment SI, there is no policy, and so everybody around you is doing. So then that, of course, could be one of the challenges to manage behavior of your swimmers. But like I said, cultural gap I touched upon, knowledge gap I touched upon. Skill gap is something we need to think more about, and saying how can I address that? Make a list of all the inappropriate drills you're using. If someone flags you, if your peer or swimmer comes and tells you, yeah, this is not right, make a list. Seek appropriate replacements for every problematic, drill or way of communication. There is always an alternate. Trust me. If, like for example, like I said, remembering names, you might say, a coach, yeah, I coach 400 children, 400 swimmers. How can I remember all their names? But you can use games, name calling games. You can use icebreaker activities. There are different ways in which you can actually learn their names quickly. So seek those replacements. Gamify coaching once a while. Just break the training, play some fun games. Goes a long way in breaking the ice between the coach and the swimmer. You get to know the swimmers better, and it just creates a fun environment for all kinds of conversations to happen. The fourth one is actually a trainer told me about this, that he uses. What he does is he creates a contract with the swimmers itself. How will I train? What is acceptable? What are permissions? What are consequences? Great way. Of course, it is not very easy, but if you can do that, if you don't have too many swimmers under you, try it. Just saves you for the entire training schedule. And lastly, to address skill gap, be open to group discussions in the training routine. Keep that window. Okay, we did this today. Of course, एक तो होता है कि sport के बारे में feedback. How are you training? How are you feeling? What about time? How can we improve? But of course, also try and have a discussion about your own behavior and drills. So, did you feel uncomfortable? Is something right? Is something wrong? So these are all ways in which we can actually address the skill gap, rather than thinking, yeah, I don't know what is the way. So this is how I do it, and this is how I've been doing it, and this is what I will continue to do. Right. So there is a way to address the skill gap. The third thing. Now you're aware what is acceptable, what we need to do. You're managing the behavior excellently. You're doing a great job. You're respecting the swimmers. The swimmers are really reciprocating that. Can you then take that next step forward and also recognize some swimmers that might be at risk in your environment, right? And how do I do that? Yes, I've talked about the signs earlier, right? So each of the types of abuse have certain signs. Watch out for these signs. So in your environment, you could be doing a great job, but if you feel, and sometimes, there's a story when a coach told me that he was coaching in a lane, and right in the next lane, there was a coach who was using, he was using some sort of problematic drill, which was causing physical harm. And that was showing, the swimmer was feeling low self-esteem, he was feeling drained. So can we watch out for these signs? When we start watching out for these signs, we become more aware of our own environment, and we become we are in a much better position to address some issues. And the last is addressing and reporting. If I deserve again, all this is fine. I'm ready to change. Want to be a good coach, but how do we address this problem, report this problem? Okay. Unfortunately, this comes out quite negatively in our sport environment, even the swimming environment, ki even before somebody can do something, media mein chala gaya. Some big case, blown out of proportion, इतना sexual harassment case हो रहा है, psych center, whatever, and और जो भी ये हादसा हुआ and all that, and even before we can address and report, it becomes an issue which spoils the image of the sport, unfortunately, and spoils the image of the coaching fraternity. So what can we do to prevent that? What can we do to gradually address and report the issue? Now, you see, we must admit firstly that we have a culture of silence. Okay, it is a natural impulse, unfortunately, in our society. It's called bystander. Bystander matlab, you might have noticed कि अगर कोई accident होता है, you'll find a big group of people who will come and watch, but not do anything about it, right? So it's called bystander effect, and that's common. Okay, could be not intervening or just denying it or staying silent. But can we take that first step? Because that never helps. And there's a beautiful line that captures that. It says, "The standard we ignore is the standard we accept." If we ignore something, that will be the standard of coaching, in India. So can we do something about it? But at the same time, it's important for us to know that we can't just be the hero and change everything in one day. It is important to think logically. Suppose there is an issue that you want to address a report. Firstly, look at the things that are in your control and then do it. Okay, it could be as simple as reporting, writing an email, filing a complaint, whatever. But also think of things that are not in your control, like family intervention or a legal case, and in that case, don't promise it, which means that, say a swimmer comes to you in confidence and tells you, something happened, this is what happened, can you help me? It's important for us to think what is in our control and what is not. And if you promise the swimmer or the child, say, don't worry, I will solve this issue for you, everything will be fine again. And if you don't do it, that has an even more negative impact, right? So this is a good framework for us to firstly think logically, कि क्या मेरे control में क्या है? Let me do it. मेरे control में क्या नहीं है? Let me not promise it. Okay, that's the first step. And the second step is actually to do something about it. And addressing report, there are two different things. I put up a long list. You can have a read. Addressing basically means speaking about it. Let us, as a swimming fraternity, speak more about this issue. इसके बारे में discussions होता नहीं है. It's understandable. It's an uncomfortable topic to speak about. But can we speak about it a lot more? I can promise that if we speak about it, the environment can change to good 30 to 40% on its own. We just start, and speaking need not be always accusing people. Huh? It need not be कि तुम ऐसे किया कैसे कर सकते हो. Speaking can just be an open-ended conversation. कि we noticed this today. Was that right? Can we change? And if you look at the list in the address, the first thing is nip it in the bud policy. The best policy in the entire world, the most effective policy in the entire world to address safeguarding, which means that especially कोई junior coach आता है, and you spot that there's some behavior or some skill that's not right, immediately spot it and discuss it with him or her. Tell him why it is not appropriate. And if something is done at the starting of someone's career, if a discussion is had, it has an impact on the entire career, which means that all the swimmers or children that the coach will encounter, could be hundreds or even thousands sometimes, are saved. Have the positive impact is an avalanche that way. So we put in the bud policy. Let's use it. If you're senior coaches, let's try and discuss negative behavior as soon as we spot it. Let's take that first step. Peer-to-peer feedback is actually very underused. हम इतना use नहीं करते हैं, but actually very effective. Just at the end of your training session, as you go back into your rooms, can you just have a conversation with the coach about something that he did or she did, and say, can you talk about it? Was that appropriate? Was that inappropriate? Within our coaches, can we discuss this in an open-ended way? Parental communication is always useful. Sometimes, unfortunately, parents themselves, abuse a child in some way. So having regular, healthy communication helps. Regular review, like I said, review your drills. Ask swimmers if they felt uncomfortable. Ask your coach if it was inappropriate. Review it, change it, seek new skills. Education, signage, and awareness is always important to address. So the more we ensure that such education programs are conducted, the more we address the issue. And lastly, let's make it a habit of seeking a policy from the employer. So wherever you're employed, could it be academy, school, jo bhi ho, a policy helps everybody. For example, if there's a case comes up, and even if it's a false case, if there is a policy document, you'll always have some reference during the case. But if there's no policy at all, you're actually more at risk, because then you just have to depend upon what people are saying, right? So seek it. Let's not just have conversations with the swimmers and peers, but also let's seek have this conversation with an employer and say, can we create some protocol, some policy where we work so that we can address. So that's address, and this is effective for the first three kinds of abuse that I spoke about. It's a physical, of course, if it's extreme, then it's not. But if it is some sort of physical abuse, some sort of emotional abuse, or some sort of neglect, then addressing is quite effective. Or just speaking about it is quite effective to manage that. But if it is a serious case, if it is a case of sexual harassment or a very strong case of physical abuse, then of course we have to report it. And there are actually, when something happens, the first thing that comes to our mind, there is nothing I can do about it. Okay, that's impulse. You think that way, everybody thinks that way, and that becomes a norm. But actually, if you start making a list, there are quite a few ways in which you can report actually. But like I said, evaluate the situation logically and go ahead. One is, of course, use the anti-abuse policy wherever you work. Do they have one? Look for it. If they have one, file an official complaint. There are different ways. Usually the policy says how you can do it. Sometimes it's by email, sometimes phone call, sometimes there's a form. Whatever is that, use it. SAI has launched a sexual harassment committee. So some of you are working under SAI. This is applicable to you. Approach the committee. There is clear guidelines in the SAI website of how we can go about approaching this committee. SAI also has a helpline that they've launched. The numbers are on the screen. So if it's applicable, you can always approach the helpline for support. Report to relevant. Okay, so when you want to report, something that is very important to understand is where the incident happened. Okay, kahan pe hua hai? If it has happened in an international event or international competition, then of course the international federations or the IOC is the relevant body that you have to report for. If it has happened in a national camp or a national competition, it's the national federation that you will have to approach. Similarly, if it's a state camp or a state event, it's the state federation. So, and if it is within your, within the premises of your training center, then it's just your employer that you have to approach. So think carefully of where the incident has happened, and accordingly, you can report to the relevant federation. If all of these things don't work, there's always Childline. I mean, we hope that it works and it will work, but if there's always Childline, so there's another alternate option that you can take where you can just dial 1098, file the complaint. There are a lot of legal institutions that not many of us are aware of for the protection of children. This especially comes for swimmers under the age of 18, minors. If there's a minor, there's CWC, JJB in every district in the country. There are clear guidelines on how you can approach them, so please do that. There's SCPCR, the State Commission for Protection of Children's Rights. There's also the National Commission for Protection of Children's Rights. There are clear guidelines in their website of how you can file a complaint, use that. The last, of course, is police complaint. So it's not that you follow this one after the other. You can use any of these mechanisms, whichever you think is the most logical, whichever you think is in the best interest of the swimmer. Right? Go back to the previous slide of how much can I really control, especially when things like filing a complaint and all of that. You will have to follow up on the legal case, support the swimmer through the case, and so on and so forth. So yes, do think of how much you can control, but if you can do it, let's do it. Let's report. Let's address the issue. In case you want to know more, there are some relevant legislations. I'm not going to touch upon it, but if you're interested, you can just Google them. These are the acts and laws that are applicable: the JJ Act, the POXO Act, the IT Act, and so on and so forth. These will be the laws in case it becomes a legal case. Lastly, I want to close today's presentation with this very simple slide that at the end of the day, with this topic, it just comes down to how we understand power. Okay, so as a coach, we have some power. Some of it is actual power, some of it is perceived power. And the swimmer feels that, yeah, he's training me, so they have some power over me. So do I use that? Do I see that as a responsibility to support? Or do I see that as an opportunity to exploit? Right? And the difference between the two is sometimes just a mental switch. But both have a lifelong impact on a swimmer. And by lifelong, I mean really lifelong, all throughout their lives. So if it's negative or positive, it's for you to decide. So as coaches, I hope we can think about this. Like I said at the start, this is not something to accuse anybody or not something where just the coaches follow safety guidelines. This is something for our entire environment. If we can, talk about this, think about this a little bit more as we go along, we'll go a long way in ensuring safe engagement with water. We'll have a lot more children in swimmer participating in swimming fearlessly, and we'll definitely have more medals as well. Right? So this is something for us to think about. I'd like to thank everyone. Just some references and acknowledgements that I've used. There are various organizations from which I've drawn from, so the logos are on the screen. And also like to thank Mr. Monil, Kerry, Mr. Moswim, Maya and Darshini from the Teachers Foundation, and Munaza, of course, from Sing Matters for their inputs for this. And lastly, thank you. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share. If you want to know a little bit more about Swimming Matters, it's on the web. You can go on the website or even write to us if you have anything to share about this session. And of course, if you have suggestions or questions, I'm happy to take it.
Thank you, Shreyas, for this wonderful session.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you from my side as well.
In the meanwhile, while I am looking for some question, I think I would request coaches to put some question if they want to. I like to, since it's a concluding day, I like to thank the initiative of Sports Authority of India and Swimming Federation of India for this wonderful session of Coaches Knowledge Series 1. In this juncture of the last day from SAI, from SFI, I like to thank Mr. Virendra Nanavati sir for his guidance and direction. Mr. Monal Chokshi sir as being the key person for structuring and execution of this series with his enormous effort day to day. From SAI, I would love to thank our DG, Mr. Sandeep Pradhan sir for his ideas and direction, Mr. Shiv Sharma sir, RD for guiding us in day-to-day activities, Mrs. Sunita Baral for her backhand support. I'd like to thank all the eminent speakers for sharing some excellent thought for our coaching toolbox. I'd like to thank our national coach, Mr. Pradeep Kumar, for supporting us whenever we needed him in question and answer session. Our Dronacharya coach, Mr. Nihar Amin, for helping us in structuring the plan. Mr. Vijay Bharadwaj of Denmark Aquatic Foundation for being backhand technical pillar. Mrs. Munaza for the technical support and advice from Swim Matters. Of course, Nikita, whom you see day to day, for not only during the session and also back-end support and day-to-day support in all aspects. Avinav. Coaching is nothing but three factors in my view. The first factor comes with passion. The second factor is knowledge. And third is execution and sharing, as being said by our renowned coach, Doc Councilman, that coaching is sharing. So keeping in that view, if you can see, we have about 7 to 750 participants, and on average, we see about 650 to 700 participants on daily basis. So all you coaches have passion, otherwise you wouldn't have come and attend this series. Now, knowledge is what you have gained in last few days. Now it's time for us to execute, and do not forget to share. So execution and sharing is your job, and we have to ensure that we do it properly to develop Indian sport in a larger level. With that note, I'll pass this to Monal sir. As I said, we just need to take this time since we don't see any more question at this point. Monal sir, would you like to address something?
Yeah, there have been some queries while in the chat box while Shreyas was presenting. So Nikita has already shared the YouTube link for the recorded sessions of every day. All 25 sessions have been recorded by Sai and uploaded to a YouTube channel. so that coaches can go to the YouTube channel and see the sessions that they would like to revisit. If you have missed this YouTube link, all the people who have registered are getting the feedback link over SMS and email. In the same email ID, you will receive the link also. So you can access the link through the email we will send to you after the end of today's session. And this email will be received by people who have registered, people who are getting their daily feedback messages. There are people who are asking about how they can access the PPTs in PDF format. Other than the recordings, all PPTs will be uploaded to a Google Drive. And once again, the link for the Google Drive will be shared over email to the registered participants. Lastly, for people who did not register but still are participating in the sessions, my only advice is please register in time. And as you can see from the unexpected response, we had the registrations open for 1,000 people and had to close them. After registration, some people are not logging in. It is not something we can do something about. But if you are not registered, we shall not be able to share the feedback links with you or share any information with you. So we apologize, but we cannot help you there. If in case you have registered, but you are not getting information, could be that in your registration process, you typed the wrong email or you made a mistake, typo mistake in the email while registering. You should send an email to info@swimming.org.in. I repeat, info@swimming.org.in. Please send an email to this with the mobile number and the email ID and the name in which you have done your registration. Fresh registration will not be done. But in case you have registered in time and you still were not getting any links, please write to this email ID. On the quiz that was announced at the start of the program, the quiz, we had thought that we will run the quiz in a Google form. Once again, the same way you did your registrations, the same way you are submitting your feedback. We were expecting to run the quiz in the Google form, which we would get the link through your registration mail. But now that SAI has decided to conduct an exam, a formal test, compulsory for SAI coaches and voluntary for others, we are to decide whether we should run this quiz. We will need to consult SAI about this, and whatever is decided, you will be informed. In case the quiz is cancelled because the same questions are going to be appearing in the test paper, so you cannot leak the test paper. Correct, Partha?
Yes, sir.
So we will take a decision on that and let you know. People who appear for the exam will be getting a certificate with a score. So that more or less sums it all. If you have any questions, please. So there's a Ninad Nimbate.
I just
He's asking me to repeat. What part would you like me to repeat? Please pose your question.
In the meanwhile, I'll shoot one question to our speaker. I just found one question. Is it possible for coaches to have a valid child protection certificate regarding this topic? Is there any company giving such certificate in India?
So yeah, there are a few online certifications and there are some courses to do. But I think what we need to understand is what is accepted by the employer, right? So wherever we are employed, where we are, what are some things? For example, in some of the countries, there is at a national level there is a working with children check. In which the government itself mandates that everybody who's working with children needs to pass a certain course. So it depends on what are the protocols and policies that are in place. Yes, if you're interested to know, you can get it. And there are some certifications that are available online. But like I said, it's important to always check if that is, that will be valid where you work, or you may have to create something new. But if you want to improve your knowledge there are quite a few certifications.
Thank you. Sir, would you like to point out that answer? Which did he
I don't
posted
know.
the?
There is a question, how do we register for the exam? Yesterday, Nikita had announced that the link, they will publish information, and we will also share that information on the Facebook page of the Swimming Federation of India, as and when that information is made available as to how the exam will be. People can register for the exam, appear for the exam. As of now, what I know is the National Testing Agency has been given the task of conducting the exam. The questions that will be appearing in the exam will be from these sessions, and they have been framed by the coaches and the presenters themselves. So the actual conduct of the exam will require a registration. The link for registering and the eligibility, etc., will be shared. As and when it is shared by Sai, we shall publish it on our Facebook page. Please look out for that. Registered participants will also get an email with this information.
Thank you, sir. There's a lady called Vijay Sri from Delhi. She have posted me personally that STA certificate, which is mandatory for teachers and coaches, which includes this topic, can be issued from India. Not very sure about that. Vijay Sri, you can post the details and share these thoughts in the group.
So let's do a little bit of justice to Shreyas' program. There's a question here which says, what is the mentality of a coach who is favoring some swimmers who are doing well in competition and not try to improve performance of other swimmers? Is this any form of abuse or?
Yeah, in a way, formally, it's a good that such a question has come firstly in the chat box, which means that as coaches, if you are reflecting about even small things like this, in fact, they're not small; they're quite significant. That's a good first step. Firstly, to even to say that maybe that is there's maybe some issue with that. The mentality, like I said, is a lot of things. Conditioning happens, as we grow up. We sometimes ourselves fail to recognize that it's wrong. Sometimes it's just that we see it all around us and we just think that's how it's going to be. So mentality is not just one thing that you can point out. There are a lot of things that that really contribute to it. But like I said, first thing is to acknowledge that something is inappropriate, which is good in the fact that such a question has come. And yes, how to change that at an individual level, obviously a coach has to reflect. But at a systemic level, yes, conversations will help. If it is a grave case, reporting will help. But sometimes policies can help too.
Thank you. And to the question that the section that Ninad wanted me to repeat, the email ID is info@swimming.org.in. This is the email ID you can write to only if you have registered but are not getting the links for feedback, etc. on a daily basis. We will not be doing any back-end fresh registrations, even if you have been attending, because that should have been done much before, not at the end of the program.
So as you can see, someone wanted to know about that STA. It is being shared in the group in case you want to know about.
That is the safeguarding certificate that is available, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's by the UK. So yes, a lot of teachers association bodies do have the certificate, and yes, to improve your knowledge, one can definitely. The Australian Teachers Association also have the certificate on their own. So it helps to improve knowledge, and of course, we need to check if that's valid in India or the place you work. But if it is, please go ahead.
In the meanwhile, Monal sir, would you like to address uh, something to our coaches or some vision which we can, how to go forward after this?
Well, I think Partha will have to wrap up, so I'll keep it short. I hope that most of the coaches and participants were paying attention to the strategy that was presented yesterday. I did receive some appreciation messages, so thank you for those. But most importantly, I hope what you realized is that the Swimming Federation of India realizes and will work towards enhancement of coaches' skills, because we realize that it is only through the coaches uh, our efforts to increase and uplift the sport of swimming and hope to produce Olympians and great international swimmers and take the sport of swimming to next level. You are the basic pillar through which this can happen. And of course, for our athletes. But since we are addressing the coaches, you are the gurus through whom this is going to happen. The more effort we spend in how you do your work is what will produce results. And kindly do take value out of this series of lectures. As you know, these lectures have all been recorded on, and Sai has so, and all speakers have so sportingly agreed to have the sessions recorded and be presented for open source YouTube. So you should take advantage, revisit those sessions wherever you did not, you wish to refresh your memories. But the best thing is to practice what you learn. Just taking sessions for the sake of taking sessions or sake of a certificate has no value. You are not contributing to anybody. So once again, in the beginning, I had said a certificate is as good as a piece of paper unless and until you put into practice what you learn
Well
by
said.
attending this program. And your core reason for being here is to learn something and to put it to practice for the improvement of your swimmers, and not for that piece of paper which just acknowledges that, okay, you do have this knowledge, but that knowledge is useless unless until it benefits somebody. With that, I will not like to give too much gyan. It is up to you. We are all mature individuals. And Partha, that's it.
Yes, sir, I totally agree.
Somebody is
So,
asking, can I do a last question?
yes, sir.
Pattai Bhattacharya, please go ahead with your question.
So yeah, I can read the question. Basically the thing is that you make a lot of effort to make a swimmer understand the workout and the values for a month, but if the swimmer is ignorant, then the coach ignores the swimmer. Will it be considered as negligence? See, there are a lot of these gray areas that come up, and it's not always very easy to say this is wrong or this is right. But firstly, let us understand what is negligence. Negligence is deliberately refusing or failing to meet. So, firstly, are you doing that? Are you deliberately refusing or failing, or you're trying but it's not reaching? So, try to make that distinction. And then, things like this is if swimmer is ignorant, why is the swimmer ignorant? So, I would make if I was in your position, I would make a think, I would try to understand what could be the reason for the swimmer's ignorance, which is where discussions come in. Like I said, the skill gap, the after session discussion. Is it because they're just not interested, they don't respect you, or they're not able to understand something? Is there some issue at home? So the approach there would be to understand why the swimmer is ignorant. And of course, for you to be safe is to know, are you deliberately doing something, or you just, it's happening unintentionally.
Thank you, Shreyas.
So
So it's a
lastly,
bit,
Partha, thank you for being an excellent host on this program and taking everybody and navigating the daily sessions. I'm sure you would be putting in that little bit of extra effort to get up early in this easy times. And
so we have
yeah,
been getting early anyways for some sessions with the kids. But yeah, thank you, sir.
yeah, but the 25 days is a long time.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm totally agree.
I'm going to feel a little free
From today
and
onwards.
relaxed tomorrow onwards.
I'm sure. I've seen the amount of hard work you have put in, till 2 o'clock in the night. And, I should let everyone know that it's not an easy thing to start up with this new system because, we are not very pretty sure that how to structure this program and how to execute with such a mass. So it needs a lot of planning, a lot of black hand support. And without that, I think it was very difficult to ensure it. So I think, sir, with that note, we can close this program. We will
Yeah.
wish all the best to all the participating coaches and swimmers.
And do look out for more such programs from SFI and continued coach learning opportunities. With that, God bless and wish you all that you stay safe and we come out of the lockdown all safe and ready